It's been a week since I took delivery of the UK's first Citroen Ami. Quite a few of you have been asking me on Twitter and in the comments how it's been going and how I'm finding it, so I thought I'd give you a little bit of an update. Done over 100 miles in the past week, so that should just about be enough to give you a bit of a first impressions, how it's going, how it's not going, and answer some of the questions you might have. There's been a huge reaction to the videos, my tweets and all that kind of stuff. Good and bad. Some of you very positive, some of you very, very negative. It's very clear that Ami's not for everyone. With its technical characteristics, it's not going to fulfill every need you might have. That's not to say though that it's not a useful form of transport and that you should be quite so dismissive as some people are. And it seems to make some people incredibly angry, which for such a small car, its ability to rile people and make them rant and rave is remarkable. I also seem to have quite a lot of comments where people just repeat the brochure over and over again. Oh, it's only got a 46-mile range. It's only got a top speed of 28 miles an hour. Well, I'd like to think that most people, if they were going to pay 8,000 quid for a car, probably already know that. It's not a surprise to me that it's limited in its top speed or that it's got a short range. Was well aware of that. But some people just seem to, they're like brochure parrots. They'll just repeat that over and over again. I'm not quite sure why. But I think it all just adds to the fact that this little car just seems to make some people irrationally angry. But anyway, I'm going to cover 5 topics today on what life has been like for the first week in the first 100 miles. And first up then, it will be noticed. Everywhere you go, people will stop and stare, they'll take photographs. There's no doubt about it that this car attracts an awful lot of attention. I had people stop me in the supermarket car park and ask me about it. Oh, what is that? Well, really enthusiastic actually, really wanting to learn more. And what I find is the people that are actually willing to sort of ask about it and learn more leave thinking, well, actually, yeah, I can see the point in that. And I can see, whilst it's got its limitations, that might be something that some people would be interested in, even if it's not necessarily for them. You get the odd person that I find, driving down a busy street, the people sort of shouting like, oh, I wouldn't want to be seen in that. More often than not, those are people that look like they can't afford to be walking, never mind driving a brand new car, or a brand new quadricycle if we want to get fussy about whether it's not a car. And I don't quite get it. The reaction, it almost seems that some of those people on Twitter or in the comments, it almost spills over into real life and they feel the need to make their voice heard. Now, I get it. It does seem to be quite surprising to some people, and they are like, oh, what's that? But some people are just a bit negative and whatever. I really don't care. Someone that actually wants to understand and learn more that I'll engage with, even if they're negative. But someone that's just going to shout like, oh, that's horrible, whatever. I'd rather be driving this than walking. Normally it is people that are either walking that tend to be the most vocal. As they say, a second class ride's better than a first class walk at the end of the day. But what I would say is the reaction from the public is overwhelmingly positive. The positive way outweighs the negative. It definitely gets noticed everywhere I go. I mean, there must be so many photos of it around, and I saw the dealership had put a post on Facebook about it being the first one, and with some photos and stuff, and people were commenting on that, like, oh look, this is the car we saw. So I'm definitely getting noticed driving around Gloucester and the surrounding area. So that's pretty cool. I had one moment which was quite funny. So I was driving down quite a busy road and I was following someone in a convertible Porsche 911, and this guy, he was trying pretty hard to be noticed. So he would let a gap build in front of him. He would accelerate into that gap really loudly, really quickly. He was rev bombing whenever he was stationary. He was doing everything just to make sure people could see him. And the only problem with that is, as I was following him, every eye within about a square mile of where we were was looking at this car and was looking at me. Nobody was interested in the big loud Porsche. Everybody was wondering, what on earth is that? And maybe some of them were laughing. They probably were. But one thing was clear, is that this guy was not getting the attention he was after. And I thought that really was quite funny. I think the overwhelming takeaway though is, if you were going to buy one of these and you are thinking about it, you probably are going to have to prepare yourself for being noticed. People are going to stand and stare, they're going to take photos, you'll occasionally get someone voicing their opinion. People are going to ask you about it at, in the supermarket car park or at a charge point. If you don't want that attention, you'll probably not like your experience very much. And then once there's more and more of them on the roads, I'm sure that will go away. I'm sure it's a bit of an early adopter phenomenon. But for the time being, I would say it'll attract more attention than you're probably prepared for. And I'm definitely seeing that. But I don't mind. It's not a bad thing. At the end of the day, as they say, all engagement is good engagement. So I'm quite happy. Next up, it is not comfortable. This is not a comfortable vehicle. I saw a few comments about, oh, I took one for a test drive, the suspension was really hard and it wasn't comfortable. I mean, it's not comfortable. As I've said before, if you think of this like a moped or a motorbike with a roof and with windows, you don't need to wear a helmet, you don't need to wear leathers to drive, you're much more in the ballpark than if you're expecting a car. It's not comfortable. The seats are hard. They're padded, yes, but it's really thin. The seats are hard. The driving position is a little bit awkward. There is no damping to speak of. Yes, it has suspension, but it crashes over every bump. I mean, for me, there was no surprises versus the test drive I took, obviously, when I was in Coventry. So I knew exactly what I was getting, and I'm fine with it. If comfort is a worry for you, if you think that you might not be able to hack, a hard seat and hard suspension and all that kind of stuff, then you definitely want to test drive before you buy one. It's not a car. It's not as comfortable as a car. It's not as comfortable as the worst car you can imagine. So if you can think of the worst, most basic car and the level of comfort it gives you, this does not have that. So if comfort is a concern for you, you probably want to buy something else. Personally, I appreciate a comfortable car. The current car I use for my big, long, stupid commute is an Audi A8. It's an old one, but it's very comfortable, very luxurious. The difference getting into this is unbelievable. I actually went between the two the other day. So I drove this to where the A8 was parked, and I jumped into it and then went to work. And the difference in comfort is phenomenal. Of course, it is a luxury car versus not a car. But for short journeys and for the driving that this gets used for, I don't really care. Yeah, it's not comfortable, but it's still better than walking. It's better than getting on a bus. One person in the comments, oh, I think I'd rather get the bus than drive that. Well, if that's your prerogative, I can't think of anything worse, personally. But if you're a bus enthusiast, I suppose the bus might be a decent alternative for you. But ultimate takeaway on comfort, if comfort is important to you and it's a concern for you, you need to test drive one of these. Do not just rely on ordering one and seeing if you like it. Contact your local dealer, take a test drive and decide for yourself. Next up then is that top speed. Yes, it is limited to 28 miles an hour, and at the moment at least there is no sign of any way of making that any different. Let's say, ignoring the sort of insurance and legal issues that might arise with doing that, there is currently no means of making these go faster. It's limited to 28. That's it. Now, this seems to be one of the biggest sticking points for people, and the cause of the most controversy. Oh, I can't believe you drive something that was limited to 28 mile an hour. Well, every single time I leave here, I turn onto a 40 mile an hour road. No matter where I'm going, there's a 40 mile an hour road outside this housing estate. I need to use it. There's no getting away from it. It's absolutely fine. You might occasionally find someone, gets up your ass, but that's on them. At the end of the day, it's no different to any other slow-moving vehicle, and it's no different to being in a car actually sticking to the speed limit and someone wants to go faster. That doesn't faze me in the slightest. I really don't. I couldn't care less, to be honest. This vehicle it's type approved, it's licensed, it's insured. I've got a driving license. It's allowed to be on the road. If someone's got a problem with it moving slower than they'd like, they can overtake, and that's that. And that is no different to someone wanting you to go faster on any other road in any other vehicle. So for me, that's a non-issue. But I do think the issue is blown out of proportion, because what I will say is, for the majority of journeys that I make with this vehicle, I am not always the slowest on the road believe it or not. I'm not always the slowest vehicle on the road, especially around town. People are really slow at crawling away from traffic lights and pulling out of junctions and all that kind of stuff. And the limited top speed of this vehicle doesn't actually make that much difference there. Obviously, it makes a difference on roads with higher speed limits, 40s, 50s, and you just need to be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what's behind you. And obviously, if you're on a really long stretch of road with a higher speed limit, then you will at some point, just like you would if you were driving a tractor or something like that, need to pull over and let people pass. Well, that's just driving 101. I don't see that it's this huge issue, and I definitely don't see that, oh, it's dangerous, it's terrible. Based on the driving I've done so far, over 100 miles actual real world experience driving one of these on all sorts of roads, it hasn't really proved itself to be a problem as of yet. At sort of peak times, where the roads are more congested anyway, even if the speed limit is 40, people aren't really doing 40 anyway. You know, it's slow, it's crawling traffic. So, you know, I think it all depends on your individual use case. And Gloucester's not exactly the busiest place in the world. It is not like other big cities. I would say it was more like a bigger town, and I'm sure I'll offend some people that are from here by saying that, but it doesn't have that sort of city vibe to me, and it's definitely not like what some people imagine when you say city, where they think like central London, where it's all 20s everywhere, and you can't even do 10 mile an hour. It's definitely not like that. It's definitely freer flowing than that, and it just doesn't really cause problems for me at all. I think if you're a little bit sensible, a little bit aware of your surroundings, it's absolutely fine. Everybody's use case and attitude to this is going to be different. You need to think about where you'd want to use one of these and what the traffic situations are like and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, again, I think take a test drive. A test drive will tell you more than any amount of watching videos or watching people rant about it on the internet is going to tell you. Loads of people have never driven one of these and automatically say, oh, it'll be terrible, you'll never get anywhere, everybody will be held up and all that. But I think real world traffic conditions in a lot of places, a lot of the time, it's not as bad as people say it is. And that's it. But if you live your life terrified of what other road users are going to do, then you might as well just stay at home at the end of the day. Or get the bus, where the bus will probably be moving at a lower average speed than one of these anyway. Next up then, wet weather. A lot of people talk about this. We had one really bad day of rain the other day, and probably the highest mileage day I've had in this. Did about 30 miles bombing around, and yeah, it's full of glass. There's not a great deal of ventilation. The fan isn't great. So what I will say is a lot of those concerns are valid for sure. Hadn't had the chance to test it in wet weather, of course, but the fan and the heater are fairly effective at clearing the windscreen. I will give it that. It's quite noisy, the fan. If I can turn it on now, I can be able to hear it. Oh, I can't. Hang on. Oh, I've not got the keys. It's fairly loud. The camera probably wouldn't do it justice anyway. But it's the side windows, and especially the ones next to the windscreen, that are particularly bad. You need to ventilate the cabin, essentially. Unless it's absolutely lashing it down and you can't have the windows open, you need to ventilate the cabin. That is the quickest, most effective way to stop the windows from steaming up. Sitting in here with wet clothes, not moving and not having air coming in, will obviously steam it up, just like it would in any car. I think I will need to look at sort of anti-fog, anti-rain, Rain X, Fog X, those kind of products and they're like, and see what they're like and see if they're effective. Be interesting to do some trials with that, maybe get some different products and test them against each other on the various windows. And because we're moving into winter, the weather's going to get worse. There'll be plenty of opportunity for testing things in poor weather. But the number one most effective way to keep it clear in here is to open the windows. And even if they're just open like that a little bit, I found that was much, much better. Designing them obviously means, unless it's really lashing down, the water doesn't come in, unless you then sort of fold them up, in which case it does a little bit. But ventilation is key. If you can keep the cabin ventilated, it's absolutely fine. But I think I will look into sort of anti-fog, anti-mist stuff. So the jury's still out on wet weather performance. I'm sure I'll have plenty of opportunity to practice at that and give you some real opinions on that fairly shortly. Based on the one day of bad weather, it's not the end of the world, but there's probably measures I can go to make it more pleasant. And I think the final thing, it is great fun. I think a lot of people get caught up in the technical stuff and the facts and figures and this, that, and the next thing, and the oh, that's ugly. But it's great fun to drive. It's massively enjoyable to drive, and I've driven all sorts of vehicles of all sorts of capability, and I honestly don't think I've ever had as much fun in a car as in this. It's not a car, but it's so much fun. I've always got a massive smile on my face when I'm driving, and some of you even commented on that in the last video. It's just brilliant. Yeah, it's slow. Yeah, it's noisy. Yeah, it's bumpy, but it's just fantastic. And that was 100 miles I didn't use my horrible old diesel for. We'll bring you some more details on my horrible old diesel in a future video. But it's 100 miles of zero emissions motoring that otherwise I probably would have been in a diesel car for. I think that says it all. If you actually care about the environment at all, you can probably get over how it looks or how it performs. And the fact that it's good fun to drive actually makes up for it, right? The total cost to charge it for those 100 miles, less than £1. And the only reason it actually cost me anything at all is because I did plug it into an Osprey rapid charger. I was partly wanting to see if it worked, to test the Type 2 adapter out. Partly also I was going to the pub where the charger was. So I plugged it in when I went in there, plugged it into the AC on a charger that can charge AC and DC at the same time. So I wasn't depriving anybody of the use of this rapid charger. And that cost, I think it was about 80 pence or something like that for using the Bonnet app, for less than 2 kilowatts for the time it was plugged in. I mean, it charges pretty slowly, this thing, right? So it didn't cost very much. And then that is the only expense I've had on charging so far. A charger that's free to use, very close to my house, been using that. And I've also been charging at Tesco a couple of times as well, and that's been enough just to keep it topped up, keep it bombing around. It's too early to talk about range and efficiency. I'd say that it's in the right ballpark, the official figures. I wouldn't say that it's massively under sort of that. Like car, it's difficult with range because all cars in the real world are a little bit different to what the test figures say they are. But what I would say is it's been pretty good so far. I don't have any reason to think that it's massively overstated how efficient it is. But over time, we'll get some real results on that. And I'm sure a lot of people will be very keen to learn how it performs in the real world. And once I've got some details on that, I can bring you some more content that revolve around that. Because I know it's important to people, but it's far too early for me to make any judgment call on how well it's actually performing on range and how often you need to charge it. But all in all, contrary to popular belief from some of the doomsayers in the comments, absolutely no regrets. I absolutely love it. Everybody, before they open their mouth, should probably go to a dealer to take a test drive. Once you've driven one, if it's not for you, that's absolutely fine. It's not for everyone. But try it first before running your mouth off. That's all I've got to say. And that's it for a week with an Ami. Love to hear what you think in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, where hopefully we'll bring you the unboxing and fitting of the orange colour pack, which you might be able to tell, you might not from this video I haven't got round to yet, and I've been too busy driving the bloody thing to fit anything to it. But we will do that. We will do that very shortly.